All right, I am going to introduce our speaker tonight, Harry Williams. And Harry is a San Francisco-based photographer, originally from Ohio, with a degree in photography from Ohio State University. He specializes in portraiture and traditional street photography inspired by the masters. And I just want to say I've been following Harry on Instagram, and he has like 200,000. How many? You have a lot of followers. And so I kind of threw it out there, offering for him to come speak to our small group, and he was super gracious and and said yes. And so I'm thrilled. I love his work, and I think we're gonna learn a lot tonight. And I'm gonna hand it over to you, Harry.
Thank you so much for hosting. I always love to talk about my work and my journey as a photographer. And I just to date myself, I got my degree in 1994, so that was kind of all pre-digital. So it's in the end, it's really nice to have that background of darkroom and traditional film. And you'll see it as the way I put this presentation together. You'll see the work that I have was like traditional photography as far as like developing and printing in the darkroom, and then kind of to what currently I'm doing now. So um, with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen and I can start the presentation here.
And everybody, don't forget to mute. Oh, can I mention one more thing?
Yeah,
If you have a question about a particular image or you want to ask Harry a question, feel free to use one of the little emoji signs. I'm probably saying that wrong. One of the little hand raise signs. And those are located, where are those located? Under React on the bottom. And then there's a little raise hand, and I'll call you out. Okay?
yeah. And please don't hesitate to ask any question, even if it's positive or negative. I love to answer it. So I'm very open to positive and definitely negative feedback. I don't get offended by too many things. Um, okay, so where I'm going to start this presentation is right after I graduated from college. I decided I didn't want to go into commercial photography. I had worked in a commercial photography studio during college, and I just didn't have any synergy with it. So I got a wild idea to sell everything that I owned and travel to Southeast Asia and work on a body of work and really devote to my photography, street photography. And to be honest, I didn't even really know what that was at the time. I just knew that I wanted to work on a body of work. So at that time, I'm going to show some of the first images that I shot in Southeast Asia, and you'll see that it's like in images like this, I used to do a lot of like still lifes, and I think because I wasn't really sure how to approach people, I wasn't sure really what I wanted to shoot. But I love these type of images like this because I love this image where it looks like there was a presence and a soul that was like left behind, and I didn't know why at the time I would shoot a lot of images like this, but I think as I got older and understood my work, there was definitely a reason why I would shoot kind of images like this. This is also where I started to do my portraiture, and slowly kind of creep into it. So the image of the woman holding the baby, that was in Thailand. That was probably one of my first images, some of my first images that I took. And then you can see as my style kind of started to get a little bit more refined. I started getting a little bit more brave. That's a woman in Indonesia in the mountains. So I actually started in Bangkok and then went all the way as far as I could go in Indonesia for almost a year. This is an image that I shot this was in a small island called Lombok in Indonesia, and she was a silk weaver. And I just love this image because of her hand, just the way it kind of dissects the wheel. And I think this was shot with a Nikon FM2, 50 millimeter lens. So I had to be really still. I had to really concentrate on my exposures and stuff. And some of this photography to this day is special to me because these are like one shot. There wasn't like multiple shots. I didn't use a lot of film at that time because I had to really conserve it. Um, Oops. These are some other, the monk is in Thailand, and then the other gentleman sitting there, this is in Myanmar. This is in Bali and Ubud. This is in Myanmar. And I started, you can see as I'm progressing through my trip, how I'm getting a little bit more confident approaching people, talking to people. And this was just at that time one of my favorite images. This woman carrying her baby. The baby doesn't have a diaper on, kind of tattered clothing, and she's got a cigarette or a big stogie in her mouth with just this kind of hard look. It's very random. I was walking on the beach and I saw her and I was like, oh my God, I have to get a picture of this. This is in Borneo. So this was a longhouse. And this is one of those opportunities that I felt like was really missed because I spent a day in this longhouse. The lighting was just this beautiful lighting inside, and I was too shy to take really hardly any photos. So as I was leaving, all the people came outside. I turned and snapped this photo, and I actually went back. I had this printed when I was there, and I took it back and gave it to them, and they put it in their longhouse. But it's one of this is one of those moments where I wish I could go back there because there's so many missed pictures from that time, but that's how you learn. So after that trip, and I'm giving you a really small edited version, but after that, I looked at my work and decided the things that were really, I had synergy with were the portraits and getting tighter and getting closer. So I really pushed myself and I went back to Vietnam, to northern Vietnam, and I wanted to document this indigenous group called Black Hmong. So this is early shots of when I started to shoot people's hands. This is a woman, she's probably was in her 90s, and her hands are stained from all the years of making indigo clothing. This print is, I have this as a silver gelatin print that's nearly 4 foot by 5 foot, but I printed it in a dark room at my studio. This is the family that I befriended when I was there. So I felt like at this point I was really getting closer, and my craft was really getting better. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had a better um, outlook when I took this trip there. This is probably one of my all-time favorite portraits, even to this date that I took. This was in um, again in Sapa in Vietnam. And this is a Black Hmong family that I befriended when I was there, and they kind of took me under their wing. And I'm at their house this day, and all the girls came out, and I photographed them. And it was funny. Every time I went, the girls were all going to work in the field, and the father would just sit inside and drink rice wine all day. And he would want me to come in and drink with him, and I was like, no, 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 no. I want to take pictures because I kind of fell into that trap once, and I had to hike back like 5 miles to my room, and I could hardly walk after that.
How old were you, Harry, when you were doing this photo shoot?
In my 20s, yeah, I was pretty young.
And was there a language issue?
No, with these young girls, tourism kind of started to boom when they were really little, and so they all spoke really English really well. And it was a really interesting thing because they spoke English better than the Vietnamese, and the Vietnamese treated them really bad, and they would make fun of the Vietnamese and call them names like cuss words and say things that they didn't understand. It was a really interesting time to be there. And then this is where I was starting again to get closer, really taking more pictures of people's hands and how they were working. This woman is weaving hemp to make clothing. This is one of the days the girls took me to their grandparents' house, and they're actually cooking us dinner or lunch in the middle of the floor. And when I was there, they killed a chicken and they threw everything in that pot. And it was so dark in there, I could not see. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be one of those times I'm just going to have to eat whatever. Well, of course, I'm going to eat it, but I was like, there's a good possibility I might get sick after this meal because everyone's waiting for dinner from looking at that. And then again, that was just a small abbreviated from that trip. And then when I came to San Francisco, at that time I was living in Ohio, I came to San Francisco for work, and I started working full time. And so I had a little bit of a break. I was still doing photography, but probably more like still lifes and stuff. So in 2015, I kind of jumped back in and I decided to go back and do portraits. And it's this body of work, I call it ICU because it was all people that I would normally, or we would see on the street, and they would be looking at us, I would be looking at them. But, you don't really want to, a lot of times you don't want to acknowledge that. And I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to get to know people. So, um, this is where I started to really, really, really just focus on portraiture and getting in close, getting in tight. This whole series was like that, and I think at the time too, I wanted to get closer to people because I didn't want to show what was around them. I didn't want to show maybe if they were what if they were like living in around tents or garbage and stuff. I just wanted to show their face or their hands to kind of show that narrative. And not a lot of these people were not homeless, and that wasn't my intention was to photograph homeless people. It was just people that would meet. A lot of the people were people that were from SROs or even people that worked. This particular guy for years and years and years he was shine shoes in South Bay on the corner. I think it was like on the corner of Second and Folsom around that area. This so over that time too, that's when COVID hit, and this is actually I went out the day after we were put on shelter in place downtown. I was just so curious of what downtown would be like when we were on in shelter in place. So this is literally that next day, and I love this picture with the guy in the wheelchair and the pigeon in the foreground out of focus and one lonely person, and pretty much that's how downtown was at that time. Again, more portraits, getting closer and getting tighter. And something changed around this time too, the way I was shooting portraits. I started shooting with a very um, wide open, like you can see one of the image of the woman was probably shot with like a f8, f11, and then I don't know what happened, but then I started shooting at f1.4, and I love that fall off it because I felt like with the fall off, I could focus even more on people's eyes. And to me, that's really, really what I always try to capture to put in focus. And it didn't bother me if the nose and the rest of the face would kind of go out of focus in the cigarette. More hands that I would also shoot at this time. People's faces. The guy's hands on the left, he is actually a jazz musician. I met him in the mission, and we had all these conversations, and I thought that he was homeless, but actually he lives in the mission. But when he started talking about jazz, he started talking about playing in Paris when Miles Davis was there, and I was like, oh my God, like, and he wasn't lying. Everyone's like, oh yeah, this guy's was a real famous jazz musician. So I had to photograph his hands at that time. Another woman in the mission. I love the image too. When I put this book together, I also wanted to get street scenes of just in San Francisco, and I just got lucky and was at the right place at the right time when they were unloading all these pigs, and I started to photograph the guy. It was just like the stacks and stacks of pigs, and the guy was shaved, like waving his hand at me. And I thought he was waving hi, and actually he was flipping me off, saying, "Get out of here." Some more portraits. The guy on the left, when I approached him, I said I thought he looked like the Marlboro Man, like a movie star, and he didn't really laugh. He just kind of kept that look and let me photograph him, and I love that picture because he just has that. And we actually became friends. I photographed him a lot. I used to see him a lot on the street. This was an image that was actually in the De Young Open that I took on 16th and Mission. And then this is some other street, same. These are all San Francisco. Excuse me. So this leads on. So after I shot all that work and pretty much in the Mission, I wanted to kind of move to a different neighborhood, and the Tenderloin had always been kind of a taboo. Nobody was going there, and people always talked about the crime, the drugs, homelessness, everything. And so one day I just decided, you know what, I'm going to just kind of take a stroll through and see for myself if I can shoot there. And I met one person, went back, met another person. And for the last almost 2 years, I've been shooting on this corner of Jones and Ellis Street in the Tenderloin. This is one of the first people this is one of my first photographs, portrait of somebody in the Tenderloin. His name's Buffalo Smooth, and everybody has a nickname there.
Hey, Harry, I've got a question. So
Yeah,
let's say you go out for a typical afternoon to shoot. How long do you shoot for?
usually like 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, and it's not all shooting. A lot of times it's just kind of hanging out and waiting and seeing what's going to happen. I don't. When I go here, I will go to this area, but I'm not constantly walking. Sometimes I do, but when I shoot in this area, I'm not constantly walking everywhere. And it took me a while to get to this point in the Tenderloin, but this is the type of photography that I really wanted to show, and it took a long time. People are comfortable with me now that I'm like literally sitting on the ground, and I can photograph life as it's happening on the corner. And this is really the type of photography that I was want to get to, and it's a process. It takes time over there. I still keep with my same themes though as well. Still shoot people's hands when I see them. And actually, I was using a macro lens to shoot some of these hands and portraits of people. So I'm like super, super, super close to everybody. I love when I can have somebody in the foreground and then you can kind of see little stories. That's what's happening in the background. That kind of gives you a sense of the place. Excuse me. So the woman on the left, her name is Autumn, and she has been in the Tenderloin for a long time. I think she was homeless for a while, and then she's an SRO. Um, and I had photographed her, and what she's holding is a photo that I gave her. So most of the people that I photograph, I'll bring them a 5x7, and that's kind of how I build my community there. So I had just given her a picture of herself, and she started crying, and she's like, you made me look so beautiful, and I'm not passed out on the sidewalk, and thank you. And I would just, yeah, I've always had my camera, so I was lucky to capture that moment. Here's another one of Autumn again. I love this street scene because it shows the diversity in the neighborhood. The two Muslim women looking at her, and she's yelling at somebody, and then the conversation that's happening. And this is, to me, like the Tenderloin. Like, this really shows more than if somebody is passed out on the street or anything. There's a lot of diversity there, and a lot of community, and people hang out on these corners because their SROs are so small. Like, what are they going to do? So they come down and they have a cigarette or a smoke and listen to music for a little bit and have a drink. Some portraits. The guy on the right, that's really close up, that's a macro shot. His name's Jose. He's from Cuba. The nicest guy and the most. I photographed him in the Mission actually, but this one I photographed him in the Tenderloin. And there's always crazy. That's what I love about this area. You're going to see something if you just sit and wait for a little bit. Somebody's going to have something funny on their jacket. Someone's going to have a crazy tattoo, but there's always something to photograph. This image, this woman really hurt her eye. And so she was asking me to look at it. And she said, "Does my eye look okay?" And I was like, "I don't think so."
Oh, no.
This woman is again one of those situations where she was saying hi to me, and then when I said something to her, she was like yelling and flipping me off, telling me to get out of there. Um, but again, this image, I don't really shoot that many images like this, but this one, because it's on the street that I shot so much, I feel like you can really kind of get a breath of what that area sometimes can look like. And so what I did at the end of after a year, I was trying to figure out what to do with all this work. So I had approached the people that owned a liquor store and asked them if I could do a show inside so that people in the community could come and see the images. And he said, "Oh, we're going to convert it into a store." I said, "Well, then could I wheat paste one out front so you could see?" And he said, "Well, you can do one image." So I put one image up, and he loved it. And he's like, "You know what?" He's like, "You can do the whole side of the building and wrap it around." And so I did these images are like 3 foot by 4 foot, and I wheat pasted them and put them up. And I didn't tell anybody. Nobody really knew what I was doing. But as soon as I put it up, it was it was really transformative to that area. All the people came and that were in the pictures that because they live around there were acknowledge telling me like thank you so much. I feel like a movie star now. I feel important. People are now when they drive through this corner of Jones and Ellis, they're not looking down on us. Now they're looking up at us because we're so larger than life. And it wasn't that was not something I was expecting. I was just expecting to show the work, to show the people that what I had been doing for the last year, and the response was so different, and it was really beautiful. And so even now, whenever I go back there, everyone's always like, "Take my picture. When am I going to be on the wall?" Or "Why did you take my picture down?" Because you can see this one got a little graffiti, but sometimes they get really, really graffitied so bad that I'll replace them. Here's another shot that you can see. So these are pretty big. Like they're all 3 foot by 4 foot, and the one on the end is even bigger than that. I think it's 72 inches wide. And then also in conjunction with the Tenderloin, I started to move to 6th Street as well. So now I shoot between Jones and Ellis and 6th Street. So this is some images that I had been shooting in the last year of 6th Street. Some of these are with the flash, some of them are. This was really funny because Daniel Lurie was just down there like probably 3 weeks ago, and I just I just happened to be down there shooting, so I kind of followed him around, and then I just positioned myself because I saw the guy walking by with a Frisco jacket and the afro, and I just love this image with the guys in the suits and stuff. And then if you kind of look at the top, you see the little sign that says sex. It's like a sex shop that he was right in front of.
Who was the gentleman in the suit?
The mayor, Daniel Lurie. Yeah, the new mayor of San Francisco. Yeah, and these are some images of people that I had met and kind of got to know on Sixth Street, and it's a very different. This vibe is very different than the Tenderloin. It's not. It's only like a half mile away, but very different. There's the mayor standing. So I did ended up doing the same thing on Sixth Street, and I wheat pasted a bunch of images up there of people from Sixth Street, and the same thing. Like everybody really, really loved it. The difference with this one is I didn't really have permission to do that. I just did it, and they didn't paint over. They left it, and the response of the neighborhood and the community has been really, really well for this.
The word you're saying, wheat pasted?
Yeah, so I print on like it's really cheap blueprint paper because it has to be non-coated, and then I mix up glue that is from flour and water. So I'll mix up like a huge, huge, huge bucket of it, and then you put it on the wall. You slap the images up, and then you put a coating over it, and then it seals it and protects it, and it lasts for a long time up there.
How about rain?
Yeah, it's fine with rain. It
Wow.
won't because you put a coat of paste over it, and so that kind of makes a seal, and then it's rain resistant. It's amazing. It really these images have been these particular ones have been up there for probably I don't know 2 or 3 months,
Wow.
And they're, I mean, if people get in there and mess with them, and you can obviously they're just paper, they'll pull them off, but they last really long. And then what I thought would be kind of fun to show you a body of work, because I still love to travel a lot. And so when I was traveling for the last year or so, last 2 years, every time I would go somewhere, I kind of got lucky that it was raining. And I love shooting in the rain. So this is a body of work about, people walking around with their umbrellas and these just kind of moments that are kind of romantic in different cities of rain. This is in Hong Kong. This is here in San Francisco. This is Portugal. There's another one from Hong Kong. This one's in Florence. I just love the girls smoking in the rain and just having their moment right there. And I just kept kind of creeping up closer and closer and closer because I shoot with a 28 millimeter lens without them kind of looking at me. And that's about as close as I could get.
Did you ever talk to her?
No, no. This kind of work, I just kind of like, I don't really engage with people. I wanted it to be different than my portrait. And you can see too, the style is a little bit different. I like there to be motion. And so I'm playing around. I get really low on the ground. When I'm almost setting my camera on the ground, people don't really notice what I'm doing. And I can just kind of be creative and find nice vignettes. And this is in Florence. And I also like to find like an area too that I can shoot around that will give you a sense of where it's at. So this is obviously in Europe. And then I've included, that's the end of my presentation, but I've included, if anybody's interested, you can scan the barcode if you are interested to purchase one of my books.
Can I put that on Facebook for you too?
Yeah.
Okay. And very last minute, we came up with a photo challenge because I forgot. So I'm going to just quickly share and let Harry um, tell
You
us.
want me to stop sharing?
No, that's okay. Whoops. What am I trying to do? I completely forgot what I just did a screenshot. Oh, this stuff. Okay. Can you all see it? Is the challenge popping up?
That looks fun.
So Harry came up with a good one, I think. Approach a stranger and take their photo.
Yeah, that'll take me right out of my comfort zone.
Definitely. And so definitely do this challenge and post it. You don't have to go to the Tenderloin. You can go to Fairfax or you can go to wherever town you're in and definitely post it on Facebook for us.
Yeah, I thought the idea behind the challenge was that it's really difficult for me. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. It's not as hard for me, but usually when you see the most outrageous person walking down the street or the most best dressed, if you approach them and say, "Oh my God, you look amazing. Can I get your picture?" Almost all the time they're going to let you photograph them. And what happens too in the end, and sometimes it's a good photograph, sometimes it's not, the lighting, the background, there's so many factors, right, that can fall in there. But the best thing is you both walk away with this amazing exchange. They're happy. You made them laugh. You made their day. They make your day because you got a good picture. And it's just such a really nice experience. And the more, there's more than less times that happens for me is that when I stop somebody on the street and say, "Oh my God, you look amazing. Can I get your portrait?" And they'll say, "Thank you. No one's really talked to me. No one's acknowledged me." And they'll give me a hug and they're just thankful that I acknowledge them. And so that's the challenge. But like Stephanie was saying, it doesn't have to be in the Tenderloin. It can be anywhere. And people like to be noticed and seen. It doesn't have to be in the Tenderloin.
I love your theory behind that, that people are feeling that they're seen. I love that.
So we can open up. Yeah, if anybody has any questions?
You can unmute if you want.
I have a question for Stephanie. If we want to share pictures, but we aren't on Facebook, can we still do it?
I can share it for you if you send it to me.
Okay,
Are you not on Facebook?
I'm not on Facebook.
Okay, yeah, send them to me and I'll take care of it. But then you don't get to see the other ones. But
I know.
I don't know a solution. I keep saying I'm going to set up an Instagram, but I'm so busy right now. I haven't had a minute, but I will.
It's all good. You're doing lots. These pictures are really inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm inspired too.
Thank you, Harry. How do you get funded?
I self-fund. Right now, I'm actually trying to I get grants to continue doing my wheat pasting and stuff. Even though those the prints to do that are actually not that expensive, but it does add up. Usually like a 3 foot by 4 foot print is it's like $7 because it's literally this printer that I'm using, they're printing it on their printer that prints blueprints, and they told me, they're like, oh, this is not something that we've never printed photography on this thing. And I'm like, well, I need the cheapest, like the non-coated, cheapest paper possible. But it became the resolution of that camera that I use is really nice, and the prints are like really, really sharp. And so, yeah, it works really, really well. Really, really well.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find the name of the photographer who worked with Anya Varda, who he prints building size.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think he's a French photographer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any interest in making them bigger?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I have one on 6th Street. I didn't put in here that's 10 foot tall by I think like 6 foot wide. And I had the printer only prints 36 inches wide, so I had to do it in 3 sections. So I had to bring a ladder and line it up on the street with the wind blowing, and it's a little challenging when you're doing that. And you have all this paper and people around you, yeah, if you're ever on, it's like 6th and Stevenson. You can't miss it. It's huge. It's of a guy that he kind of is. I call him the mayor of 6th Street. He's always around there. Everybody knows him. So I did a huge picture of him. But I hope to do bigger ones, and I proposed actually a show in Italy to do in this small community. I was there last year. There was a small museum that had a few of my prints there, and I just kind of fell in love with the people in the town, and so I proposed to do like a public art piece for them, sort of like what I'm doing in the Tenderloin. So we'll see. Hopefully, something like that will work out. But yeah, it's really, you could do it anywhere because it's amazing how when people see themselves like that, for the community, it's just amazing, you know.
Marianne, you have a question?
Comment and a comment. Thank you. Your work is really inspiring and so rich, the tones, and it just really gorgeous. So thank you for sharing. And the photographer you were wondering about is JR. He's a Parisian, and he does the big buildings, and he was in San Francisco and did a lot of neighborhoods, and then it was at the San Francisco MoMA. It was all about San Francisco and how it was getting gentrified. Anyway, JR's he does a lot of
Yeah.
He does a lot of
Yeah.
wheat paste.
Yeah. I've seen some of it. It's beautiful stuff. Really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
you
really
shot-
nice too, because my friend is another photographer, and we went to the Tenderloin because we knew he was going to be there. So we tracked him down. We saw the big truck, and we were like, what are we going to do? So finally we just went and started talking to some of his assistants, and they said, ooh, would you like to meet JR? We were like, yeah, we. He was the nicest man, so down to earth, and it was really a good experience.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great present, Harry. That was a great presentation. I wanted to ask you though, what's the level of danger you do you feel it's safe in the Tenderloin at all, or
Um, yeah, that's you know, yeah, when I first started to go there, it was sketchy, because I didn't really know that many people. I would go and just hang out with a couple people that I knew and just photograph them. I've learned a lot of street smarts of being in photographing in the Tenderloin that is useful anywhere that I go in the world.
yeah,
I don't carry a lot of, I don't actually carry any equipment. I just carry my camera. I have a hand strap. So
yeah,
it's just carried around my hand. I don't have a backpack. I don't have
yeah,
anything with me.
yeah,
Um, and that's kind of my style. That's always been my style. I don't like to carry a bunch of stuff. Um, and in the Tenderloin, like I don't even walk around with like my camera. If I see situations that look a little sketchy, I just even put my camera like it's dangling from my wrist, so
yeah,
people can know like, oh, he's not
yeah,
trying to sneak a picture or something. Because I
yeah,
think a lot of people do that there.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
You can pick up the vibe pretty easily.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And then if somebody acknowledges me or say something, then I'll stop and I would talk to them. But yeah, that first year shooting there was not the easiest. I got ran out of there a few times. There's a story, there's this guy, he was screaming at me from across the street. I wasn't photographing him, I was photographing somebody else. And he was yelling at me, get the fuck out of here. What are you doing with that camera? And I wasn't even pointing at him. I was literally photographing somebody on the whole other side. But people watch you, and he was watching me. And
yeah.
he came over and, what are you doing? And my friend I was photographing, it's like, oh, he's photographing me. He's
Mm,
not, he's not a cop. He's cool.
yeah,
But the guy never, I could tell every time I was around, he just was very uncomfortable. So
yeah.
I stayed away from him. And my friend that I was photographing, he was homeless. He was living in a tent on the street there. And he said, let me give you some advice about that guy. And I said, okay, yeah. He said, don't mess with that guy. And I was like, that's not what
Oh,
I thought you were gonna say. And he said
oh,
that guy just got out of prison.
ah,
He has this prison mentality. And he was
ah,
telling me a story where the guy walked up behind him the day before and poked him in the back with a knife
oh,
and said,
God.
but he was joking around and said, will you hold this for me? I need this. I need you to cool this off for me, or I don't know, something. But long story short, that guy, a year later, after when I put all the prints up on the wall, there was a black couple that were embraced, and I put a big poster of them up on the wall. And he came up to me and he said, this is really beautiful that what you're doing. I love to see how you're photographing people in the community, and
Mhm.
and how you're showing love and kindness, and will you photograph me? So I said, of course I'll
Wow.
photograph you.
Whoa.
Did you
Because this
photograph him
is like,
yet?
oh yeah, I photographed him and put his picture up there, and and that was a cool, like it broke down that barrier. And so
Yeah.
a lot of times things like that have happened over the year. Um, but yeah, there's some scary situations I've seen, like um, one time somebody pulled a gun on somebody else standing there. There's been multiple people that have been almost died of fentanyl right in front of me.
Um,
Um, I snapped a couple pictures. That's not really what I shoot, but because it's on that particular corner that I'm shooting, um, I more want to show the empathy of people. Um, I saw somebody get beat up like really bad, knocked out, right there, and then probably about a couple months ago, somebody punched me in the face.
Oh,
But these are just like, I mean, the person that punched me in the face, it was a very weird thing. It was actually a woman, and I was just standing there, and she came out of nowhere and just like really whacked me good. And my friends that were with me that lived there were gonna go beat her up, and they were, yeah,
um,
it was kind of a big deal. And I said, no, 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 no. I don't. There's just no sense in that. Like she's out of her mind, anyways, and what good is that going to do? And I'm like, that's not my point for coming down here. I don't want to see somebody get beat up. I felt like that was always bound to happen at some point, so it didn't really bother me that much. So, but it's not, you know what? It's not, there's more people that are really nice down there, and really, because I shoot down there so much now, that they're way more open to photographers coming through, because people are taking pictures of the wall, of their images on the wall, and they love that. And so they're like, oh, there's these photographers that came down and they were taking pictures of your work, and we were talking to them and they were so nice. And so it's kind of changed that dynamic there a little bit, which is really nice, you know?
That's great.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your work, by the way. Your
Thank you.
silhouettes and stuff, and your hand photos are just great. Yeah, love your work.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think with photographers, I was explaining this to somebody that when I was in school, my teacher said, you know, everything that you're doing right now is really not that good. He said, you're
Yeah.
not going to take good pictures for like another 30 years. So just have fun and play around with it. And we were all like, you're crazy. Like, you know, it's like you're young and everything. And I've learned that over that course of me doing photography, that I'm starting to now I can talk intelligently about my work and why, and there's reasons why I would shoot certain things. Whereas when I was younger, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to shoot that because it's cool, or it looks cool, or that's maybe I think that would give me a good grade. And I
Yeah.
wasn't quite sure what I was doing, but I started shooting hands, and it dawned on me one day, because my grandfather, he was a World War II vet, stormed Normandy, like just a very, one of those American guys that just aren't built like that anymore. You know, he drove a Harley. And when he was dying, I was probably 10 or 11. And we went to the VA hospital where he was at, and his hands were tied to his bed. And I was at eye level with his hands for hours. And I can't remember what he looked like or anything, but his hands, I just stared at them the whole time, and they were swollen, and his rings were swollen on his hands. And I just looked at all his cuts and everything, and that haunted me. It just like his whole life was in his hands, and here's this guy that wasn't moving, and yet he was just this, you know, served in, fought in Germany, fought in France, um, and I never forgot that. And I think started going back to really shooting people's hands because of that.
Mhm.
And it tells a story, you know, without even having a face on there. And every little cut, every missing finger, you know. So I really kind of got into photographing people's hands. I didn't show a lot of them, but in my book, I have a lot of them. And some of them are people that have lost fingers and stuff. And those are really interest me because of the stories that are behind that, you know.
Yeah. Great presentation. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much, Harry. And
Oh, Dennis has a question.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your wonderful work. You're quite the ambassador, quite the ambassador, and you have a tremendous rapport with your subjects and the friends on the street. I noticed that you didn't have one color photo. They're all black and white. Do you not shoot in color, or
No, uh, when I started in college, everything was black and white. I mean, I did take some color classes, but pretty much everything was in black and white. And so, I think from spending so much time processing film, and then being in the dark room, you get to the point where you see tones better than color. Like I could control that better, you know, at that time. I knew exactly what was going to get. Whereas in color, I felt like I didn't have as much control, you know, if that makes sense. Like
Sure.
you can process color, but we didn't really process it. And when you print color, you kind of put it through a processor, and you can mess with but I felt with black and white, with all the classes I had to take, zone system and all this stuff, you could really, really, really affect, the tones.
Mm.
Now, fast forward to now, I'm not really sure why I don't shoot color. I think because I still see everything in black and white, and I tell people too, like I can see the photo before I take it in black and white. Whereas in color, I think I do shoot a little color, but I look at things completely different, you know. And sometimes black and white is harder because the range of tone, like you get a tone of color that's going to show up, whereas in black and white, it's just going to look muddy or something. So you have to really understand those that range, you know, that you're working with. But I do actually, when I was in Thailand, I used to carry a Holga around, and I used to shoot color with that. And so I do a little bit of color, but yeah, most of my focus is in black and white.
Well,
I hope that explains it a little bit.
sure, sure. Well, you do exceptional work. You know, your finishing and your compositions are just marvelous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Harry. And I'm going to post your QR code on Facebook tomorrow. And your show is Friday night, tomorrow night?
No, it's next Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So if anybody's in the city, it's going to be a really, really fun event. Like I said, we have live music. It's really they're really cool shows when we host them here at my studio. So it's fun.
Feel free to join our Facebook group, and then you can post as much as you want. You can see what if people are inspired and they post their photos based on the show.
I want to see that.
It'd be great for you to comment. And we have another hand.
Could you say where the show is again? I'm sorry, I missed it at the beginning. Next week.
It's next Saturday. It's 224 Mississippi Street.
Okay.
In the chat as well, if you want to cut and paste it.
Oh, okay, the chat. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, but definitely, if you can come by, it's going to be really fun. And this is everybody in the group. I'm pretty active on Instagram. But so if you have any other questions or anything, or if you happen to be in the city, please reach out. I always take people with me when I'm out shooting. I'm happy to do a meetup and to pass on anything that I have to anybody.
What's the kind of camera that you're using?
Right now, I use a Leica Q2 monochrome.
Thank you. Very wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Do you want to share that?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Here, I have it right here. Oh, it went away. H. Williams JR photo.
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
JR photo.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. And I'll post all this stuff tomorrow.
Thank you, Harry. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. So good.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Good night.